In our last episode, we crossed some big sand dunes, and as well as that, we did some minor vehicle repairs along the way. We visited the Lone Gum Tree where we ate lunch, and then we returned back up to the French line via the Knowles Trap. We had to do a bit of serious work on some of the sand hills as we made our way to Poeppel Corner. After leaving Poeppel Corner, we set up camp and had a great barbecue tea. I'm Mick, and this is Sally. Together we've been caravanning Australia since the 1980s, and more recently we started to put the videos together just to show you some of what we see out there. There's a lot to see in Australia, and we hope you enjoy what we have here to show you. You can follow us on our trips via the following social media platforms. If you like the following video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Coming up in this episode, we continue to play on the sand dunes before we reach Eyre Creek, where we set up camp for the night. We have a look where the main track is flooded at Eyre Creek that created the detour, and then we continue on with the sand dunes until eventually we finally get to Big Red, where we get all our vehicles to the top. After leaving Birdsville, we camp one night at Mungarani, and then we go on to the Flinders Ranges for 2 final nights in the trip. All that and more in our final episode of Crossing the Simpson Desert. With our cool mornings still continuing as they have for most of the trip once we got into the desert, we're still able to experience these pretty sunrises. Yeah, good morning everyone. We didn't get as far as what we thought we were going to get yesterday on day 9, so I started day 10 this morning, and a very brisk cold morning this morning, but now that the sun's up it's quite nice, so we'll get packed up here and get on the road again and see how far we get today. We doubt whether we'll get into Birdsville, that was the intention, but we're in no rush and we're just puttering along, so where we get tonight will be very close to Birdsville I think, but not quite, so we'll catch you along the way. This week was book week at the kids' school, and even though we're out in the desert, Joe got the kids involved with it. With everyone all packed up, it was time to push on, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, which was our regular time of departure, or at least our target time. As we travelled through the desert on this trip, we all agreed at the very beginning that if we got away somewhere around 8:30, 9 o'clock, but 9 o'clock was the target time, and travelled during the day and set up camp hopefully no later than 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that would give us plenty of time to travel during the day, as well as that, enough time to relax during the afternoon before the sun went down. Most of the sand hills that we crossed during our crossing were reasonably firm with the sand, and some of them were chopped up a little bit, which made it difficult to climb, but that didn't make them impassable by any means, but on some occasions, and this one in particular, a little bit of a helping hand was required. Rather than chop up the sand dune, we just hooked up a tow rope and pulled this one backwards to get it out of its wheel ruts. Once we got it back down the sand dune a little bit, it gave it the opportunity to go forward again and go over the top of the sand dune without any issues, as well as that, without chopping up the sand dune for the next people to have a rough ride to come up over. It may sound a bit unusual to say, but having to get out and help someone in one way or another to get over the top of the sand dune in a desert crossing like that, that's what memories are created from. As you climb a sand dune that's been chopped up and rutted out with a vehicle, it does throw you around quite a bit as you climb up because your vehicle falls into those deep ruts and wants to follow it like you're sliding in the mud. We come across quite a few motorbike riders on this trip, and this fella here, he's doing it solo, and good on him, but each of them, well, not each of them, most of them, we're a little bit concerned about the amount of fuel that they were going to use to get across the Simpson Desert, and they did wonder whether they had the fuel on board to achieve that. And where we saw this fella here, he's only really starting the trip across, so to be worried about fuel so early in the trip, it really was a bit of a worry. Some of the bigger sand dunes that we had to climb up over were between Poeppel Corner and Birdsville, and the Birdsville side of the dunes rutted out quite badly on some of them. It was a great experience crossing the Simpson Desert, and with a great experience comes fast moving time, and no sooner we started in the morning, and once again we'd pulled up somewhere on a nice clear flat piece of ground that wasn't grassed over and set ourselves up for lunch. As we travelled during the day, we did find some corrugation on some of the roads, but it wasn't bone-shattering corrugation, it was quite manageable. We're now approaching the turn-off for the Eyre Creek bypass road, something that we'd been looking forward to travelling around on, and having a look at this flooded section of the Eyre Creek that we'd seen so many photos on social media. When we purchased our Desert Parks Pass to enable us to go through the Simpson Desert, in that Parks Pass you receive a map of the desert, and it shows this road here as an established road, and even though it's called the bypass road at the moment, it's only open for when the Eyre Creek is flooded, and the road was in good condition, and as I say, it is an established road. It's not something that was put in there just purely to come around the flooded section at the moment, but we're now travelling mainly between sand dunes again, and because of that the road was relatively flat and allowed us to achieve quite a reasonable ground speed. There are a number of watercourses that we drove through on this road, and when you see it green like this, it makes you realise just how much water must have been up there during the flooding. It's a dry, harsh country up there, and to see this area all flooded was something that you would have to enjoy from the air, of course, but oh, what an awesome sight it would have been. This particular watercourse that we're in, it's not like watercourses that you'd see down south in Australia where you've got a creek that might be 10 or 50 or 60 metres wide. These are kilometres wide and very beautiful to drive through. As we started to approach Eyre Creek and saw the water in the creek and the green around the area that we were travelling through, it was almost jaw-dropping and such a scenery to see. As we looked around the high marks on the banks of the Eyre Creek, it was quite easily to see how high the water had reached during the peaking period of the flood, and it was just unbelievable. There's many campsites along Eyre Creek that anyone can camp at, and it was decided that we were going to go across the other side and have a look at some of the campsites over there. So it was in the water and across we went, and these are the markers that guide you across Eyre Creek when you want to cross the creek to continue on your way. The water level in Eyre Creek was dropping each day and dropping quite quickly, and it wasn't very deep at all for us to cross and go across to the other side to check out those campgrounds. As each vehicle went across the crossing, if they were lucky enough to be following the person in front of them and spotted that that person actually dropped down into a hole, because the bottom of the crossing was made of stone really, there was no soft sand, no mud, so if the stones were flicked out and created a hole and that person fell into the hole, then the fella travelling behind could see that and he could adjust his line of course and get across without falling into that same hole. And in reality the crossing itself was not difficult to do at all. The creek crossing was reasonably long and something that you wouldn't want to do when the creek is running at its peak. Once everyone had made it across Eyre Creek, we had a bit of a look around and quickly had our campsite set up. After being in the desert for the last few days, when you come across a camping site like this, and so much water around, green grass, and nothing like the desert at all, you quickly realise that you could spend a few days here if only you had the time. As the drone moves along Eyre Creek, you'll see the arrow come up there now, and that's where we camped for the night. If you're going to camp in such a beautiful location with water, you've got to go out and get your feet wet. With the warm days that we're having on this trip, the kids certainly enjoyed their time out in the water. With Paul having already cooked a camp oven for tea and a damper, as well as Vicky's 2 dampers, tonight Joe was going to cook us some scones on the fire. Once we had the fire going long enough to generate enough coals, it was time to start to cook the scones. Once the scones were cooking, it was time for that moment of truth. Once that lid was raised from the camp oven, we knew that Joe managed to cook the perfect scone out in the middle of the desert. After a good night's sleep, it was time to get out of bed, enjoy the sunrise and get that fire going. Yeah, good morning everyone from Eyre Creek. Oh, what a lovely campsite this one was last night, laying in bed and listening to the water trickling down the creek, but very nice, and it's the sort of location you could spend a number of days here and just sit back and relax. But we'll pack up and move on shortly, and today we will get into Birdsville. We'll have a bit of a play on Big Red if those that want to on our way in, and then make our way into Birdsville, and that's where we'll be camping tonight. So we'll catch you along the way. With the morning light and no breeze at all on the water, it certainly made the creek a picture to look at. Everyone in the group was now into a bit of a routine during pack up in the morning, and before long the campsite was packed up and we were mobile, making our way towards Big Red. We were now heading south along the bypass road, and some of the road was quite good, but it did turn very stony, and as we had our tyres down for sand, we thought we'd take the effort to blow the tyres back up, and even though it was probably only going to be for a short period, it was easier to blow them up than to change a flat tyre that had been torn apart with stones. As we were driving along the track this morning, we came across another bearded dragon lizard, and the previous ones that we were seeing were yellow in colour, and that matched the sand that they were in. But this fella, he was a dark grey colour, and that matched the trees or the little twigs here that he was resting himself on. When we got down to the end of the Eyre Creek bypass road, we went and had a look at the flooded section of the Eyre Creek. And this is the road here that comes out of Eyre Creek that continues on to Birdsville. And as the camera swings around in a moment, you'll see the flooded section here now, where the track would normally cross through the creek. A lot of water still in this part of Eyre Creek, so no doubt there's going to be many, many months before the road will be open. Well, I would assume so anyway. Unfortunately, I couldn't take the drone any higher to get a real good perspective of the area here. I had a hawk that wanted to have a play with the drone, so as soon as I got it up and got this footage, it was time to put it back down onto the ground. After letting our tyres down at the end of the bypass road, it was time to make our way onto the road that was going to take us back to Big Red and Birdsville and start to move back into the sand. No sooner had we left Eyre Creek than we were starting to climb sand dunes once again. The sand hills that we were now climbing appeared bigger and steeper than the previous ones, but the good thing about it, the sand was hard and firm, and this allowed us to come up very slowly rather than bounce the vehicle around so much. Knowing that there was vehicles coming, we pulled over here and waited and allowed them to go through. From Poeppel Corner to Big Red, we would have seen heaps and heaps of vehicles that were travelling along the tracks, and even though there was a lot here, there didn't seem very many on the western side of Poeppel Corner. We had heard that day trippers will go from Birdsville out to Poeppel Corner and then back to Birdsville, but to do that in a day, I think that would be a very hard, long and exhausting day, but people do that section of the track rather than go right through and do the entire desert crossing, and I can understand why. As we follow the vehicle in front of us, you can see it falling into the wheel ruts as it travels down the sand dune, and it's just sliding around as though it's in mud. Even though Sally and I had been across the desert before, and it's only on one occasion, of course you can't remember everything, but as we were going down here to this clearing and started to come up the other side on this sand dune here, we were quite surprised when we come over the top of this dune that Big Red laid before us. With only one sand dune left to conquer, our time of playing in the sand was all but over. No one in our group made it up the side of Big Red on the first attempt, but after that first attempt it set us up and let us know what we needed to do to achieve our task. After letting my tyres down to 15 psi all round, I had my first run here, and it was quite a bit from the top actually that I never got up there, and that set me up and let me know what I needed to do to achieve it. Having reversed all the way back from Big Red, it was time for another run up, and this time all went well. Once up on top of Big Red, Sally jumped out and she grabbed the camera, and then it was time to head back down and take a second run. Up and over once again on my second run up Big Red, and it was time to park the car and watch everyone else as they tried to come up as well. Next to come up on his second run was Kerry, and he had no issues and no troubles whatsoever driving up on the sand. Automatic transmissions certainly are a big bonus when you climb sand dunes like this. Next to try and come up the side of Big Red was Joe, and like all of the rest of us, never made it on the first attempt. Certainly is a memorable part of the trip making it up the side of Big Red, but what a sinking feeling when you know you're not going to get there. Rolling it back down the dune and way back to have a second run. There are so many tracks to get up the side of Big Red, and Joe thought that she'd try a different path just to see if she could get there. Nearly to the top on this run, but not quite. Now fully armed with the knowledge of knowing what's needed to be done to get to the top, Joe was on her way again. The small crowd that was standing on top of Big Red, watching everyone trying to come up like this, they certainly get behind you and cheer you on when they know that you're going to make it. The next one to try his luck on Big Red was Greg. Unfortunately, on the first go, like the rest of us, never made it. On Greg's next attempt, like Joe, he went up on a different track. Another one in the group successfully makes it to the top of Big Red. The final vehicle on its way up to the side of Big Red was Paul, and he knew that he had a challenge in front of him because he didn't want to be the only vehicle that couldn't make it up there. I'm sure with strong determination he had a plan in his mind. So close but so far. He was down at the bottom again on his way up for another run. With Paul successfully conquering Big Red, it was around to the back of the dune, and it's there that we blew our tyres up and ate some lunch before we left. It was a great sense of achievement knowing that everyone had conquered Big Red, and we could all leave this trip knowing that we had these memories to look back on where everyone succeeded in climbing the big sand dune. With our tyres on the vehicles inflated, we started to make our way to Birdsville. Once in Birdsville, it was time to refuel, and for those that want to know how much fuel I used to come across the desert, it was 110 litres. Once everyone was set up in the Birdsville Caravan Park, we all enjoyed a nice hot shower. It was now late in the afternoon, and we decided that we'd take a wander down to the iconic Birdsville Hotel and enjoy a nice cold beer. Once again, like so many other mornings on this trip, we woke to a very colourful sunrise, something that I'm going to miss when we return home. As we were leaving the Birdsville area, we called into the Birdsville bakery, and Sally happened to find this unique toilet roll holder in the ladies' toilet, a rabbit trap. How authentic is that? Now travelling on the Birdsville Track as we head south from Birdsville, and once again, like all the roads that we've been on this trip, they're in very good condition. It wasn't very far north of Mungarani that we came across this bit of water, and there was a little bit on the track itself, but not very much at all. It certainly holds its water there, so it takes a long time for it to soak away. With us now travelling on the Birdsville Track, it wasn't very long at all, and we soon covered the 318 kilometres for the day, and it was during the afternoon that we turned off here to go to the Mungarani Hotel campground. It was during a recent flood event when the Birdsville Track was closed to the public that the Mungarani area here, the campground, was actually full of campers that could not travel on the track until it reopened. And even though it was a hotel, believe it or not, they didn't run out of beer, they ran out of milk where people couldn't have their coffee. It was reasonably early in the afternoon when we did arrive here, so there wasn't too many campers at this stage, but as the evening progressed, or the afternoon progressed into the evening, the camping numbers soon built up. With our campsite all set up, it was in the evening that we went over to the Mungarani Hotel and enjoyed a pub meal. From Mungarani the following morning, it was back onto the Birdsville Track where we continued to head south. It was the middle of the morning when we reached the Clayton River campground. The campground has a number of facilities for campers to use. They've got this hot bath, and as well as that, they've got hot showers and toilets. As Vicky went to exit the toilet, she found that the door had locked behind her, and for whatever reason she couldn't get it to unlock. With both Greg and I being unsuccessful at opening the door for Vicky to come out, the only way that we could get it open in the end was to pass a screwdriver through the roof ceiling, and then Vicky pulled the lock apart from inside, and that allowed the door to open. We was back on the road again, heading south once more, and we watched the kilometres click by until we eventually hit the bitumen and realised that it was very nice to be on this blacktop after so many kilometres of dirt road. It was at Parachulna that we left the bitumen again and did a left-hand turn here to make our way up to a campsite within Parachurna Gorge. Leaving the Parachurna Road, we crossed over the Parachurna Creek until we found a suitable campsite that we were happy with to spend the next 2 nights. This is a very popular camping area that we chose to stay at for the next 2 nights, and once set up, we had campers on both sides of us. In saying that though, they were far enough away that we weren't going to interfere with each other. Having now completed our Simpson Desert crossing, when we left home we allowed 2 weeks for the entire trip, and we managed to complete the trip and get back to here with 1 night spare. So that 1 night was going to become 2 here, and that allowed us just to sit back and relax and unwind before we eventually did arrive home. The Flinders Ranges certainly is a pretty place to visit, and we were quite happy that we had the opportunity to spend 2 nights here on our way home. Our campsite on the side of the Parachurna Creek wasn't very far from this water, and it certainly did offer us for some lovely water reflections. On a couple of occasions we did see some of the gorge wildlife come down to the water here and have an early morning drink. For our next trip away, Sally and I will have the caravan in tow this time, and we'll be returning back to the Flinders Ranges. So if you would like to see more of what the Flinders Ranges has got to offer, keep an eye out for those videos when they go up on our YouTube channel. Well, that brings the end to this video, and the end of our Simpson Desert series of videos, and we hope that you've enjoyed them as much as what we've enjoyed doing the trip. It was a great group of people to do the trip with, and we really enjoyed it, and we look forward to maybe something similar down the track, who knows. But until that next video goes up on the channel, you take care and look after yourself. If you like the video that you just watched, give us a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of our videos, click on the subscribe button, and once you've done that, change the bell notification to all. That way every time that we do uploads to our YouTube channel, you'll be notified.